travel nursing, the industry, and what Congress is doing because they're getting involved in staffing overcharges supposedly. So Congress penned a letter, and it's going to be they're trying to get an investigation going to see whether travel nurses and the agencies were overcharging for their work to hospitals.
Oh, I gotta go. I've been working, told them please don't hit my phone. I'm in my zone, bruh, just leave me alone. Was on the road, but I swear I'm coming home. Now the drinks on me, I think we need a toast. See, I did it for me. Now my old friends calling, told them nothing's for free. Told me time is money, dog, swear I paid all my fees. I was starving for this game, now my family can eat.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of The Cup of News with your host Matt and myself, Peter. Thank you everyone for tuning in, thank you for your time. Make sure you check us out on couplenurses.com. We keep all our show notes there. We have a bunch of cool blog posts. We have literally everything that's couple nurses related, on-click study guides, some travel nursing information on the website. And also make sure you check out the shop as well, some cool merch. Matt's wearing one shirt right now. For those of you that are audio only, it says love with some syringes, the healthcare sign, a stethoscope, and some Band-Aids, spells out love. That and other cool merch on there. As well as we are frontlinewarriors.com. That is our place that we keep all our mindfulness, wellness, health-related things. A lot of cool blog posts there. A lot more stuff coming out slowly week by week. And there's, of course, a shop over there as well for all your mindful merchandise, like the shirt that I'm wearing that says inhale, exhale, because we need to breathe to survive. And breathing also calms down and helps us move forward individually and as, like you could say, a human civilization. Yes. Don't forget to also check out prontohealth.com. That is something, if you sign up for, it's more geared towards travel healthcare, you could say, in a sense, but it also has a little bit of like staffing information. That's something we are going to roll out in the near future, but right now we could just toss your email in there and subscribe to it, and that way we'll keep you updated on what's happening over there. It's something that's revolutionizing healthcare industry as a whole, and it should be out hopefully in the next couple months here. And also check us out on YouTube. That's Couple Nurses on YouTube. We keep all our vlogs there. We have some nursing briefments every time Matt and I finish a three in a row shift. We always talk about it, what we learned, kind of mistakes that we've made, how to improve, and just our nursing life here in Texas. So how's it going, Matt?
I'm great, man. Another wonderful jam-packed episode today. We're going to talk about travel nursing, the industry, and what Congress is doing because they're getting involved in staffing overcharges supposedly. So Congress penned a letter, and it's going to be they're trying to get an investigation going to see whether travel nurses and the agencies were overcharging for their work to hospitals.
Yeah, and it's just crazy how this is coming out now because if you guys remember a few episodes ago, Matt and I actually talked about these giant contract prices for nurses. I mean, that also includes all healthcare professionals, CNAs, respiratory techs, and all that. They're making a lot more now than they have pre-pandemic. And we talked about this, like, where is money coming from? Because there's always a staffing issue in nursing, and there's always a pay issue with nursing. And the excuse was always, hey, we don't have enough money for these ratios. We don't have enough money to increase your salaries by a bigger percentage. But hey, it turns out that money is coming in from somewhere. And we weren't really sure where it's coming from or how it works. But obviously the travel nursing agencies were making a lot more money during the pandemic than they were pre-pandemic. Same with the hospitals. Now that results in having these higher paid contracts because now there somehow is money in the system. I'm not sure if it's due to like government bailouts or just whatever revenue plans that they pass as a government, but it's crazy how much contracts are going for. It's like two to three times more than they used to, man. It's crazy.
Yes, it is. And this is what the letter is exactly saying. So there was over 5 senators that put together a letter that stated they received anecdotal reports that staff nursing agencies are vastly inflating the price by 2-3 times the pre-pandemic rates. And they're taking in 40% or more of that amount being charged to the hospitals for themselves in profits. Yeah. So, 40% is a high margin.
It's high. So if you take 40% out of like $5,000, for example, that a lot of nurses make on a week during a pandemic, that's $2,000. So potentially you could be making $2,000 more, but that $2,000 is going to the agency, you could say. And that's just the amount they're telling you. They said it's roughly 40%, and that's just the cost they found. So there's probably even a bigger percentage that you're getting taken out for these agencies without you even knowing it. But 40% is a big chunk. It's probably more in I feel like 50% because some of it obviously goes unnoticed.
Yeah, and they're asking for one or more federal agencies to investigate exactly what's happening. And some insider info, because we're, of course, in the travel nursing niche, so we can understand how things are going. The way this all started was back in 2020 during the start of pandemic when Iowa was charging high bill rates for New York when all that happened. And supposedly the bill rates were up to like $350. And what happened is, and hospital realized this, and they knew that they were getting gouged on the price, and they filed the complaint. So this is where it all started. I know there was different states like Delaware and Pennsylvania that filed a complaint as well for high prices and staffing agencies because they can't keep up with the demand. There's just no money in the system supposedly to pay for travel agency nurses, and then the staff nurses, they can't retain them because of how enticing it looks for them to leave and go travel.
You know what's interesting? Remember how we did a contract? Now, I don't want to, defame Total Med or whatever, but we did a contract in Oakland from Total Med. I remember like a year later or like a year and a half later, we got a check saying that we were like underpaid
Part
or
of
something.
a lawsuit, yeah.
Yeah, it was part of a lawsuit. So this was pre-pandemic too. So that just shows you, like, Matt and I got like a check regarding an agency because they were underpaying us. So this was already going on pre-pandemic. So imagine how much more is going on during the pandemic because it's an emergency, right? And that's happened to us. Like, what are the odds of it happening to us? You feel like it's not very high. But if it happened to us, it probably happened to a bunch of other nurses because Total Med is a travel nursing agency. And if they kind of, you could say, ripped us off, they probably ripped off other people as well. And look, it came to the forefront that, hey, they owe us more money than they gave us. And that was pre-pandemic. So now we're saying that the travel agencies are getting busted of overcharging during the pandemic. So it's like kind of no shit because it was happening before.
Yeah, I can see that happening. And I'm envisioning this like a dealership where...
Like a used car dealership.
Yeah, the contracts are the cars that are being sold, and unfortunately, recruiters and these agencies, they're the dealership and salesmen that are just trying to get the freaking car out of the lot. So they're going to push their prices. Sometimes they are high. Of course, they're going to try to push their margins as high as they can, and then try to if the nurse is kind of going higher in the price, that's where they're losing their margin and trying to negotiate a contract. So that's the way I see it. But for those nurses that are kind of listening to this and wondering what's going to happen to the travel and nursing industry when all this happens, so we don't think it's going to impact the nurse at all because nurses have already been understaffed for years. And this is not necessarily an agency thing that's happening. I mean, you could have one company that could get in trouble for this if they do investigations, but this is more of the market is dictating the price, not necessarily the travel agencies where they're going to get busted for this.
But now that I'm thinking, like, what if all these agencies go on like a collective effort and they say, fine, we're going to charge less, but then instead of them taking less profit, they're going to offer less money for the contract for the nurse. You know what I'm saying? Like, they got screwed over, so they're not going to let themselves get screwed over. They're going to keep pushing who gets screwed over.
Yeah, I
hope it doesn't happen.
I just don't think they're going to get screwed over because, this is the hospitals fighting back right now, and the American Hospital Association is probably fighting back and trying to represent the hospitals because the CEOs are probably complaining of the bill rates. But let's keep in mind that every single C-19 patient that came in through the doors, the government got reimbursed at $35K. That's a lot of money. So don't tell me you guys don't have pockets for this. Maybe there was a scenario or two that looked bad, but that doesn't mean as a collective we have to get punished. And back to the whole thing of supply, demand, and the market.
Yeah, and it's $35K for just a COVID patient. So they're getting $35K.
C-19, bro.
Or damn, little mosquito in his house. I'm hoping not. Hope it's not gonna bite me. But like this whole C-19, the $35K per C-19 patient, that's the base rate. That's not all the extra stuff that's getting added onto it that we're still charging insurances and like the whole healthcare system. $35K is like the base rate. Like, how you have a base rate in your travel nursing contract, you have a base rate. Like, if a COVID patient comes out, that's automatic $35K.
Yeah.
And then whatever else is above that, you could charge it too, but base rate of $35K no matter what. Isn't that crazy? Doesn't matter if that patient goes to tele, doesn't matter if that patient goes to observation, doesn't matter if it goes to the ICU, to Metro, oncology, doesn't matter. That's $35K. And then you could bill them whatever else you want on top of that. That's wild. So it's like...
We don't know how the hospital and the benefited off that.
Yeah.
What if like the patient was stable and it was just like on a couple liters of O2 and they still wanted us to keep them on 2-3 days overnight or observation because they could build an insurance company.
Right.
So we don't know that side because that's not disclosed of how privatized the hospital, healthcare system is.
And what's crazy to think about how screwed over nurses are, it is you get in a hospital's best financial interest to keep nursing salaries low, right? That's if they could pay nurses less, because we're like the biggest burden, you could say, on the hospital financial system. They keep the prices as low as possible. That benefits them. And also, travel nursing agencies are also doing the same thing. You think about it, because if they could pay less, they could pay you less for that contract. Guess what? The agency is profiting off that.
Yes.
So it's like both sides are in the mindset, are in the mindset of, hey, we need to keep these travel nurses on a salary as low as possible, because when the salary is low as possible, everybody else makes money, which is crazy to think about, but we just realize that right now.
Yeah.
It's wild.
And for those that are trying to understand on how the travel nursing agency works, or maybe didn't listen to our previous episodes, let's give an example to understand this. So you have a bill rate of $100, and this is going to be the bill rate that the hospital is going to pay directly to the agency. So that's $100 that the agency gets. Now they have to pay the nurse. So usually there's margins, and smaller companies have smaller margins. Larger hospitals or larger agencies have larger margins because they have more top-heavy staff, and everybody has to get paid. So if the travel agency makes 30% off that bill rate, that means that travel nurse gets $70 an hour. Agency keeps the 30, and whatever the difference is. And this is where the margins kind of come into play. You can negotiate the pay, and they adjust margins, and some companies have specific cutoffs, but that's like the main scenario of how you get paid. And then it gets broken into stipends and what's it called, the hourly rate, but that kind of goes deeper into the whole breakdown of the contract.
Yeah, it's like, for those of you that aren't in travel nursing, once you do start travel nursing, or if you're thinking about doing it, it's a little bit more complex and complicated, like a staff job, because it's more like independent work, you could say. And that's also another reason why travel nursing is a lot more profitable for nursing, is because you have less stuff being done by the outside factors of you could say. Because when you're travel nursing, you have to look for your contract and keep negotiating a contract, compared to if you're a staff nurse, whatever you get hired for as your hourly pay, that's your hourly pay for the whole rest of the year. Then you get like a little raise. For travel nurses, you're renegotiating pay basically every 13 weeks. So it could get a little overwhelming sometimes, but you got to understand that this is what you have to do to make that much more money. The more stuff you're able to do alone, the more money you're going to make as a person, and even as a business, right? If you could keep a lot of things in-house, well, guess what? There's less money leaving, more of it staying in, and that's kind of how travel nursing works. And that's why you kind of finagle the system like to your best interest to make the most money possible as a nurse, and that is through travel nursing, because you're basically dictating on where your money is going. The shitty thing about it as well is that there's really no like 401k opportunities, no like savings opportunities, because you're always changing contract, always changing agencies, unless you really, really like one agency. But besides that fact, you're always looking for the next biggest contract, next best contract, and you got to kind of figure out the rest yourself. Yeah. Only thing you're guaranteed is that check when you're working, and that's it. Everything outside of that, investment-wise, insurance-wise, health-wise, paperwork-wise, that's all you. But that's why the money's there, is because you're handling most of your stuff.
Yep. And with the whole Congress thing, so AMN actually had a response on what they thought about the situation. So AMN is one of the largest travel staffing agencies in America. They represent 17% of the market share for travel nurses, and 12% of market share for allied, which is X-ray, tech, CT scans, respiratory therapists, and etc. So just to give you a perspective, there's about 1,000 agencies that are operating for travel nurses, 500 agencies that are relevant to the game, and there's one agency that owns almost a quarter of that game. So, I mean, they're big. And Kelly Ratowski, which is the chief operating officer of AMN, said that pricing is agreed upon directly with our healthcare organization clients. Inflationary pressures and demands are driving up the wages needed to attract clinicians to open positions, which is us. Any price increase are driven primarily by the compensation that goes directly to the healthcare practitioners. So, yeah, again, supply demand. There is a need for travel nurses. I mean, let's face it. During New York, that when all this happened, like, you were scared. You didn't know what you were expecting. You felt like you were going to war, because that's the mentality I had. So yeah, we deserve those higher rates. We're dealing with less PPE, bad ratios, no breaks, all that stuff that goes into a burnout. Hell yeah, we freaking deserve more pay. How are you going to start investigating that if it's just a market demand?
Right. Even in pre-pandemic, there was a high demand in nurses, but a low supply. Pre-pandemic, units were short-staffed. So imagine if you have imagine you already had a short-staffed unit, and then a pandemic hit, which puts everything into overdrive. So your unit's going to be even shorter during the pandemic. Nursing-wise, we were not very prepared for pandemic. That's why we had all these shortage issues and all these problems going on in New York and Chicago and LA and Texas, everywhere in Florida.
You had freaking military boats pulling up to the ocean. Yeah. Supposedly we were taking patients back then. I remember that. I was like, damn,
right?
This is some shit.
And this is what happens when you kind of delay the inevitable, right? How year after year, nurses were asking for better ratios, higher pay every year. Better ratios, higher pay. 2015, better ratios, higher pay. 2016, same thing. 2017, 2018, better ratios, higher pay. And we never got it as nurses. And then, bam, pandemic hits. And now all of a sudden, everyone's wondering.
It's a problem.
Now it's all now people realize it's a problem. And hey, and now people are wondering why are these contract prices so high? You got California contracts going for $10,000 a week for 36 hours. Well, no shit, because there's not enough nurses. So obviously, if you're going to raise the price, you're going to get more nurses. That's a logical thing to do. If I can hire somebody for $5,000, well, guess what? I'm going to try for $7,000. If I can't do it for $7,000, I'm going to have to go to 8, 9, 10 until I can hire somebody, because there is a financial threshold where a nurse is willing to take the contract no matter what the situation is. Those hospital units could be horrible, right? But for $10K, they're guaranteed there's a nurse to take that.
They'll shut up and kind of eat,
right. And if you want to make somebody work in worse conditions, money is a motivator. That's the only way you're going to do it.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to pay somebody less money to work in a tough unit compared to somebody that's working an easier unit that's making the same amount of money. They're obviously going to take the easier unit.
Yeah.
Because it's not worth the stress.
And if you're trying to understand the market and what we mean by supply demand, it's simple. So the national pandemic caused healthcare staffing shortages, but also added two things to the problem. One of them was the demand and price and patients, which was the influx. And then also it drove nurses out due to the healthcare burnout, the mandates, and et cetera. So now you have more patients, less nurses. Of course, price is going to go up. And that's just how the bill rates started skyrocketing, and these hospitals are started getting upset with these agencies.
Yeah, and it's like if you could picture like a supply and demand issue. I'll give you guys some numbers. I looked it up before we hopped on this show. So in 2020, there was about 500,000 nurses that retired from bedside. So it's 500,000. So technically, we're 500,000 nurses short in 2021 because of the ones that retired in 2020. But the crazy thing about it is when I looked up the amount of people in nursing school, there was only about 250,000 to 350,000 nurses in nursing school. So technically, we are not even able to cover all the nurses that are retiring.
We're roughly 200K short.
Yeah,
on just retirement.
Right, on just retirement, exactly. And we can't even hit that benchmark. And let's say pre-pandemic, we were still short nurses. So we were still short 100,000 of nurses that we still were playing catch up with because we couldn't catch up. And now the pandemic hit. Now it's even a greater burden. So now they're projecting that we need about 1.1, a little bit over 1 million of nurses for 2022. And we can't even cover ourselves for the 500,000 that we lost last year.
Yeah, and
it's crazy.
Look at the mandates too. I was kind of briefly scrolling through. I'm not gonna. There's some maybe healthcare systems that lost like 1%, 0.5%. But Kaiser, for example, out of 230,000 staff in all of Cali, they lost over 2,000 nurses just due to the mandates. Mm-hmm. So that's adding a burden as well. And some nurses are, after they realized what the pandemic is, some of them dipped. They went to per diem, they stepped down. Of course, there's the whole travel nursing aspect. But some people said, I'm done with this. Mm-hmm. Even in my smaller hospital where I started in Chicago, I was kind of bouncing back with, and this was last year, a conversation is they didn't want to work. It wasn't worth it for them. If you're close to retirement and you were almost trying to get your full pension or whatever the case might be for your Social Security, I don't even know how that works because I'm too young. I don't want to know, right? And it's they just said, screw it, I'm just going to go on retirement. It wasn't worth the trouble that the pandemic gave nurses to deal with.
Yeah, and God forbid they catch COVID, they are in a higher mortality, higher risk group because they're older. So not only are they getting stressed out with the higher workloads, they also have the risk of actually getting COVID-19 and having a hard time through it and getting sick and potentially dying. And it's crazy because we had, back in my unit in Chicago, we had an older nurse, and she dipped when the pandemic started. But I believe her parents were very sick. So it's like she had, I don't want to call it a burden, but she had the struggle of A, taking care of her parents, B, working full time, and C, now the pandemic is hitting.
Yeah, you coming home every day knowing that something might happen to your parents.
Right, and God forbid it's not exactly so her parents. So if she gets sick, what if she gets her parents sick, and then she's screwed? And and that's like the hardest thing to live with if you're an older adult and your parents are older as well, and you get COVID-19, and unintentionally you don't know, and you give it to them, and they end up passing away. That's horrible. Even though it's not your fault, you don't have it's you shouldn't blame yourself. You, as human beings, and the way we were created and the way we are, we're always going to have a little bit of that guilt, and you don't want to go through that. So people said, fuck that guilt, I'm going to retire now, screw the money's not the most important thing, my life is, and the rest of my life is. So they dipped, and we have this giant shortage now, and we even had a giant shortage before the pandemic. So it's like wild how everything is, all this shit is hitting the fan at the same time.
Yeah, it's also a cool perk that you just realized of travel nursing, and I was aware of it, is because you're traveling and you're not having family close by, you're coming home to, in this case, a few roommates, or just being solo, being alone. So you don't have the chance of exposing people to an infection if you acquired it during your work time. So that kind of gives you a peace of mind, versus some nurses during this time were sleeping in hotels, sleeping in the different rooms because they didn't know they were washing up before they entered the home, like all these crazy things. I'm just gonna go to my home in Venice and just chill, because I have nothing to worry about.
Yeah, and the cool thing is, even the perks of like dual travelers like you and I is, so as travelers you kind of have this idea of like, actually you don't really have an idea, you just have this expectation of the unknown, that I'm going to this new unit, it is what it is, I'm gonna work there. But in the back of our mind, we usually think of, okay, they're hiring travel nurses, which means they're short, so there is a probability of this unit being short and us being overworked. But what's cool is that Matt and I travel together, and we're in the same hospital. We're basically extra staffing this unit, so it's always like cool to see we got the benefit, because you could tell when the unit is short one nurse, because usually if you do like 3 shifts in a row, on one of those shifts you're gonna be a little bit more overworked, because you're gonna feel that lack of one nurse. So Matt and I have the perk of working together, so that one missing nurse, guess what, we got that covered if it happens to be like that. So it's really cool about dual nurses. And what's really cool about travel nursing is, like, yeah, you might be going to a unit that's understaffed, but at least you're entering a unit that's trying to staff, because you're not at that staff shop that doesn't allow travel nurses, because not every hospital allows travel nurses, only during certain times or during certain issues if the budget allows it. So your unit might not allow travel nurses, and you could be short-staffed, and you're trying to catch up with hiring staff, and hiring staff takes a lot longer than hiring travelers, because you have to build them up, you have to interview a bunch of people, you got to pick a proper candidate. Compared to travel nurses, you just hire them, we have that experience, and we're ready and good to go. So it's cool that we work in hospitals as travel nurses that allow travelers, because we are filling that shortage gap, and we just might be just what they need. And it's cool, you turn a unit that's poorly staffed to now a fully staffed unit with a better work environment for both the staff there and us as travelers, which is a wonderful thing to do, even though we're getting paid all this money, and some people are a little bit upset because they're losing staff. But guess what? It is what it is. We're high in demand. We're going to take advantage of the situation.
Plus, we're a great resource. Like the night shift that we're working on, there is a lot of new grads, and they don't know a lot of things. And you're almost like their little aid and resource, because the whole entire ICU is very new. I'm not sure what happened. Of course, we can speculate that it was a turnover. There's a lot of people left for travel, whatever the case might be. And yeah, you get to experience all that, which is amazing. And another thing I thought about is this unit that we work on, they had FEMA nurses coming in, and those guys were getting paid like $150 plus an hour, those bill rates. So who paid for them? Was it the hospital that paid, or was it the federal government that was paying and aiding? Do you get a discounted price from the federal government because they're aiding during this pandemic? Questions I had, because if the hospitals were affording government contracted workers to help for a high ass bill rate, why are you complaining about travel agencies doing it? True. But those are insider information that we don't have access to yet.
Yeah, we should have somebody from FEMA on, because the way I think about it, it's like almost subsidized. Like a unit is very short staffed and they need nurses now, but they don't have enough money to cover it. So I think FEMA comes in and says, hey, how about this? You do the bill rate for $100. We, the government, will throw in another 50. So instead of bill rate being $100, it's now 150, and the government's taking some of the hit. But then these female nurses are getting paid more because they're getting 150 instead of the 100.
Yep.
I think that's how it works. Oh, yeah, and I was just wondering, when you're talking about us being travel nurses in like a very young, you could say, unit, I feel like sometimes it's easier for new nurses to ask questions and open up to travel nurses because we're not there for the long term.
Yeah.
So they might not feel like they're being judged. Or if they do feel like it, they feel it's like only temporary because they're going to leave anyway. So I don't want the staff thinking I'm dumb or whatever. And you're not dumb, by the way, for asking questions. Some people might feel like
just self-consciousness.
Dumb. Yeah. You might just feel dumb asking like a coworker a question. Feel free to ask travelers a question, because if you are kind of scared about having that be the way nurses view you as like, you don't know everything, then ask travelers, because guess what? We're there temporarily. So, we're down to shoot the shit, and we're also down to educate you. And you could ask us anything, because worst case scenario, we're gone in 13 weeks. So if you're not sure or kind of timid or scared to ask staff, feel free to ask us anything. We're always down to help. We might offer even better information than the staff does, just because we have that wide perspective on how things were done in different states and different units. So I feel like travel nurses are very valuable and very knowledgeable, and the hospital staff should take advantage of that.
Definitely, man. And we're very versatile. Like just this week, I floated to 3 South, and that was a tele floor, and I had no idea what's going on. You just, get your assignment, get your phone. Here's a code. Here's a break room. And you're just adapting. But there's something super exciting about that, where you just, there's a basic formula of how to do bedside care, and then there's all those other aspects that come into as a traveler, and it makes it so dynamic. One fun fact is that 20% of people who start traveling after 2 years only return to their permanent jobs receive a permanent job. So 80% of travel nurses that start continue travel nursing after 2 years. So just to let you guys know, if you guys plan on it, it's addicting in a sense. It'll get you hooked, and you guys are going to be well on your road exploring all the different cities in America. Yeah,
it's crazy because you see all people like on Instagram and saying they want to travel. They wish they could travel more, and they're nurses, and it's just like there's a thing called travel nursing. One thing you already do, which is nursing. Second thing is what you want to do is travel. Well, guess what? There's a career called travel nursing, which literally encompasses both of the attributes that you have and that you like. So it's crazy because you make more money and you get to travel wherever you want. And if you like where you work, you could ask for a permanent position there. I guarantee you, if we ask for a permanent position in our unit in Texas here, they would for sure say yes. They're for sure. They're short-staffed on nights, and they were, without hesitation, say, yeah, we'll hire you if you wanted to stay. We don't, but that's like your option. And B, if you don't like where you work, it's only 13 weeks. There's nothing beyond that contract that says, hey, you have to stay here for another 13 weeks, another 2 or another X amount of months, days, or weeks. So you could dip, and that's all it is. You dip, you go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And it's cool because like you and I, we haven't really had any thoughts of like settling down or anything like that, like permanently moving somewhere, right? So that's beautiful for us because we could literally travel anywhere across the United States and figure out what cities we like. Like, for example, when we compare Austin to how Long Beach was, we could say that Long Beach was a better enjoyable time than Austin is.
Based on, the pad we had and everything, 100%.
Right? Even though Austin's really cool and has a lot of its perks, a lot of stuff to do here, it's wonderful, the unit's great, I just personally would choose this city over Austin. And that's kind of the benefit you have of being a travel nurse, is you could, if you do want to settle down in the next 5 years, why don't you spend 1 year, 2 years of your life right now trying to figure out where you want to settle down, because wherever you are right now doesn't have to be where you end up.
Exactly. Cool about it. And one interesting thing too is, let's just say you're in that phase of settling down, you find your boo-boo and the spot, you find your dream spot, you're living there. Babies out. Yeah, you want to pop a few babies out and you want to find this permitted position. So one benefit of travel nursing is, let's just say, and I'm going to make an example of Chicago because this is an idea that I had when I returned after my first year of travel nursing, is if I'm not going to be in the mile radius of 50 miles or less, you can basically still get a contract, but they're going to pay you at an hourly rate, not your stipends. But what's cool about that is you could get the in. So if you're applying to University of Chicago and you have a hard time getting in because it's union, it's great benefit, but there's a ton of applications, well, you just skip the application process because you started traveling there. You picked up a contract. You already have the in. Now you know the manager. You're going to get to know her. And based on your personality, you might just get offering if you want to end your contract and work staff. They'll do that to you because they already know you versus that resume that's just laying on the side and they're going through it.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That's a very, very big and valid point. Like if you do want to settle down, you already have it in without the wait at these big teaching or university hospitals. Because if they're taking in travelers, and if you could prove yourself in that 13 weeks, talk to a few people, be nice and cozy with the manager, there you go. That's your way in. And guess what? They're gonna appreciate that because now they don't have to pay this giant contract cost. They have you as permanent nurse, and they already vetted you because they gave you patience. You already know the unit because you've been there for 13 weeks, compared to a new grad where they have to invest in the teaching, the education. Because guess what? For the first few months of that new nurse's career, they're shadowing. So you're basically paying two nurses to do one nurse's job, and that's a giant burden on these hospitals and the healthcare system is new grads because they are more expensive. And if you could somehow convince a traveler to stay permanent, that's an awesome thing. And that's actually really cool because I feel like that gives an incentive for these units that have travel nurses to make it a better experience for the travel nurse. Because as travel nurses, you see the shit shows of units that you see and you don't want to work at. So if you want to really harness the power of travel nurses and their experience, if you're just a unit looking to hire, if you make it an enjoyable time on your unit for a travel nurse, that nurse could turn into a permanent position because you're not really sure what their long-term plans are. Maybe they do want to settle down and they just happen to be on your unit and they just happen to be like the nurses there and like that unit. So they might stay. So that's why I feel like maybe units and managers could kind of focus on that and figure out a way how to make these travel nurses stay that would kind of help out the business model and just the unit in general and costs.
Yes. And the place I saw it a lot is San Diego. So San Diego is one of the most popular travel nursing areas. They don't pay as well, but you pay for the location, everything.
Experience.
There was so many nurses that I've talked to that were staff, and I talked about their experience. Like, yeah, I used to travel nurse. Multiple travel nurses stayed and became permanent. Mm-hmm. Some couples that met in Ohio, traveled together, just said, I'm just living this life, and then ditching everything behind and just moving to San Diego. So that's totally doable.
Right. For all you administrators out there, charge nurses, managers listening to a couple of nurses, like we're giving you some good points here. If you make a unit enjoyable and a good place to work and spend your time with, you're going to have better retention for your staff, and also you're going to have the retention for the travel nurses, which is really, really, really beneficial long term.
And when it comes to the unit, it's not necessarily like decorating it and putting a coffee maker in there. Those are cool perks, but it really does come down to culture. The way you're treating your staff nurses will directly reflect what they tell us, and we call that a vibe, right? You understand the vibe of the unit, and you're going to be able to know if you want to work there or not, or how the staff are feeling.
Yeah.
Because if they come into work and complain, that already tells me all.
Right.
That already gives me the answer. I don't need to talk to the manager or anything.
100%. Because if you treat the travel nurse properly, because technically travel nurses are like the bottom of the totem pole. We're the contracted workers, so they usually give us the shady situations, So if a travel nurse comes in and realizes that, hey, this unit's taking care of me and I'm a travel nurse, I'm not even part of this group, and they're making me feel like I'm a part of it, I'm gonna want to work there. Worst case scenario, I'm just gonna renew my contract. Maybe I won't stay permanently, but maybe I'll renew my contract. And it's a lot easier for hospitals to renew their contract because nurses usually settle for only a little bit more in pay, and they don't gotta do the orientation. And they're not gonna get vetted because they already know what's going on. So there's a lot of benefits for travel nursing, like the travel nursing space. It's also another reason why we created a Pronto Health, is because we want to help healthcare and especially nursing and allied positions to basically harness as much of themselves and of the environment that they work in as they can.
Yeah, and ultimately we're gonna empower every nurse that's listening that wants to be part of this, because
not only travelers,
you're going to have the option of choosing a permanent job or per diem or traveling. You could bounce between all that under one job board. You're going to have your resume under one app, not needing to jump ship with different agencies and all that. But more to come about that.
Yeah.
And if you're interested in travel nursing, you guys can always give us a holler, DM us on socials, email us, and we'll try to connect you with somebody that we know to get you an awesome rate. Or if you have any questions about travel nursing, you can check out our free travel nursing guide or the checklist. Just send us a DM as well, or it's on the bottom of the description, and we shall keep in touch.
Yeah, for sure. Just some quick fun facts for you travel nurses out there, or people that are maybe trying to travel nurse for the next couple of weeks or months, the most popular contract spots in the United States are California, Texas, and New York. They also happen to be some of the most top paying ones, which also, makes sense. Most popular cities are Denver, Colorado, New York, Austin, Texas, Tucson, Arizona, San Diego, California, and also Dallas, Texas. So these are very popular cities. So you may be thinking, oh, they're so popular, I'll probably get paid the most. But a lot of times it's more about the experience in these cities than it is for the actual contract. So a lot of times, don't be surprised that, hey, a contract out in Bufu, Texas is going to pay more than Austin, Texas, because Austin, Texas is a known city. So a lot of people are going to want to go there because there's a lot of stuff to do. So a lot of times nurses are willing to take a little bit less pay, but to live more vicariously through the experience than it is through the money. And some of the highest paying contracts are anywhere from $5,000 to $6,000. Anywhere lowest paying contracts are $2,000 to $3,000 a week. I think 3 to 5 is like the average. And of course, during the pandemic, those will go up a little higher. And also depending on location, those could go also a lot higher. Like there's some contracts in California. Of course, they're in Bufu, California, but they're going for $10K a week for 36 hours, which is insane. So you can make $130,000 potentially in just 13 weeks, and you could not work for the rest of the year if you don't want to.
Take a break from nursing or invest in something or pay off your loans. It is all doable with travel nursing. So I would definitely give it a try for those that are curious, interested, or on the verge of doing it. Just commit and give it a try. You will not regret it.
100%. Thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in. Have a lovely weekend.
Peace.